more than halfway there. Moving on, principle 8.
Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. One of the things that Agile recommends is instead of having projects and funding a project, you fund teams. Once you have the team together, you want to have a sustainable pace, a sustainable amount of work that the team can take in that iteration that they set for their team. Let's say it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks. In that 2-3 weeks, they should know how much work they can get done. And it's not like the older days where you have this big release and after that things kind of slow down.
Sure.
This is constantly like, what kind of pace can a team really feel comfortable with, where they're creative, they're churning out code, working software, but there's really no big deadline. There's this kind of iterative and incremental production of software.
And that makes a lot of sense, because in waterfall, you have kind of waves for different roles, right? Because at the beginning, there's a lot of pressure on the business analyst to gather those requirements, get the designs done, work with whoever get the designs done. And then they get the lull as they hand that over to the developer, and the developer gets that spike of work. And then at that launch, you got a bunch of people working overtime to try to help make sure we're launching this. So it makes a lot of sense, is why you want more like consistent work. So that's principle 8, keeping a consistent and indefinite pace.
Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. So let's look at the first part. Continuous attention to technical excellence, meaning there is unit testing, there is no extra bugs that you're just kind of sneaking in. You're building the product properly.
With quality in mind, right?
With quality in mind. And because if you don't build that quality now, then you have to pay later. You have to pay money for that, right?
Yeah, 'cause you gotta fix it.
Yeah. And then the second part is good design. So when you're saying is a good backend should be in place. What's
the most important?
Yeah, what's the point of having a nice UI but then it doesn't even work and you get complaints from a customer, or you get more bugs or more enhancement requests for that piece of software.
So that's principle number 9, the technical excellence and good design. What about principle number 10?
Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. So focus on simplicity. So you start with what you know. Like if you have a huge piece of software that you have to build, instead of getting overwhelmed, like what do we do? This is so huge. Look at something that's very, very simple that you can have a solution for that. Just focus on that. In the waterfall world, we have all these features and they want all these features. In reality, that's all hypothesis, right? The customer might not need all these features. So focus on simplicity, focus on making the software very simple and intuitive, but then also focus on building only those pieces of features that are actually valuable to the customer. And you can experiment, you can design an experiment to learn that really early on, instead of just going based on a hypothesis and doing a big bang release of a huge product.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that comes out of waterfall sometimes is when stakeholders find out that you're doing one big project, they're gonna like unload the bucket of every feature they can think of, right? Even if ones that they, like you said, may not need, right? Just because, well, it's gonna be like a year and a half before we get this done. I'm gonna give them all my wants, even if it's not important, but just because it comes to my head, because if I don't say it now, they're not gonna change later because we can't in this methodology. And Agile is basically saying like, hey, keep it simple and let's focus on a component at a time. So that makes a lot of sense.
And then even if you're thinking about a feature, right, there's something called a feature bloat. So it's like a bloated feature. Why do we have to have all these bells and whistles in the feature? Why not we just focus on the main things and then use that money and time of the developers on something that's going to bring more revenue or more value to the customer or the company?
Always got to look at the return on investment.
100%.
All right, so awesome. So that is Agile principle number 10. Let's move on, jumping into number 11.
Best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. So before, you borrow people. For this, I will borrow an architect. For this, I will borrow a QA from this team. You build a team in a way where every skill that's needed, it's part of the team. And they don't just go away. It's part of the team. The UI developer is part of the team. And now, if they are self-organizing, they can come up with the architecture and the design on their own, and they will evolve over time versus upfront. Let's just only work on the design and architecture.
Got it. All right, cool. So that is principle number 11. Last one, number 12. Let's do it.
At regular interval, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. And this is something called team retrospective. So every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever that iteration that the team sets
whatever that sprint is, right?
Whatever that sprint is, they will, at the end of that sprint, they will see, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, and how should we improve. And then it's the teams say, somebody's facilitating that retrospective. So every few weeks, they're actually looking at how are we doing things together? How effective are we in working together? And what are some things that we need to improve? These might be things with working with each other, somebody who might be a junior developer and there's a senior developer, you can do things much faster than the junior developer. So how do we actually encourage and help this younger developer? And somebody's having a hard time. These things can be discussed in the retro in a regular interval so that team kind of solves their own problems.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, so that's the 12 Agile principles. Thanks a lot, Vivek.
Yeah, you bet.